want to get it started?
Yeah, let's do that.
It's 1:05 p.m. Ryan, if you can cut the music for never mind.
He's already on it.
You're already on it. You're wonderful. Miles, thanks for throwing your name in the chat there. Welcome to everybody who's here. We're going to get it popping because we have a short amount of time. Everyone who has introduced themselves in the chat has stated that they're also residing on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, something that when we are talking about politics specifically, it's very important that we ground ourselves in that knowledge. First of all, that we are living and doing this work on stolen land, and two, that for many people, the act of voting, the act of participating in the electoral process is fraught with issues. And I'm really grateful that the Green Party, at the very least, is speaking the truth to that exact reality and trying to do the least harm possible while interacting in a system that has historically been very harmful. I am really excited to be the host with the most of this, a 1 hour of power spent with my darling sweetheart, Nazanin Moghadami, who is running for the MLA of Vancouver, Kensington. Nazanin, please introduce yourself, say hello to your constituents.
Oh my, what should I do with that introduction? How can I even match? Hi everyone. Salam bar hamegi, صبح بخیر. My name is Nazanin. و من اینجا از سرزمین مردمان بومی ماسکیوم، سکوامش و اسلیلت در خدمت شما هستم و به عنوان مهاجر این وظیفه ماست که تاریخچه این مرز بوم رو بدونیم و بدونیم که وظیفمون به عنوان مهاجر و settlers روی این سرزمین چی هستش. It's our responsibility as immigrants and as new settlers to understand the responsibilities that we have and the history of the lands that we are in, and what does that mean in terms of ongoing genocide and colonization. And also just acknowledging the fact that First Nations folks could not vote until the 1960s unless they given up their status. And just letting that settle, that white women got the right to vote in the 1910s, 1917s, something like that. And our Indigenous people could not. A lot of people cannot vote. So just like the burden of that, where's my ballot thing? This is my first provincial election that I can vote as a Canadian citizen, and I'm so excited to write my own name.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It sounds very egotistical, but here we are.
Egotistical at all? I'm telling you, if I had my own ballot, I would write my name in. For real. Okay, so Nazanin, you have decided to step forward and run for the MLA of Vancouver, Kensington at a time where things politically are wild. I am very excited that you are running for the Green Party. Please tell us a little bit about why you decided to run for the Greens and not the NDPs, because folks might have assumed that you would run for the NDPs. Why did you choose the Greens?
Yeah, I know. Like as an organizer, as a union worker, like as an activist, like it makes you question. Well, I was at a campaign rally in 2016 for someone who was running for NDP, and I was cheering and standing up, and then I realized that like, oh, I'm just tired of cheering for middle-aged, cis, straight, white dudes. And not only that, is that I can do a better job than the person who's on the podium talking. So it's not just the representation, but also like, if that's what a politician can do, I can do it. So I started to talk to a lot of people who have ran before. So I started talking to like Jennifer Reddy. I started to talk to Tag Bandali and Kristen Boyle, Jean Swanson, and I was like, should I run? I'm a counselor, I'm just a therapist. And they were like, yeah, you don't need a law degree, you don't need a business degree, you don't need a policy degree. You're an activist, you have things to say, run. And that's how I started to kind of like think about that. Oh, maybe I can run. Maybe that's something that I can do. And then the provincial election came. I've experimented a little bit with contacting the MLA here where I
Mm-hmm.
live as a constituency, and I didn't get anything. And then I started researching, and I realized that I can't vote for a party who have taken my writing as granted for like more than a decade, for 12 years. I can't vote for a party that has taken its people for granted and has been absent. And I want to vote for an MLA who is present, is available, is engaged, that people know the MLA. And I think I can be that person. I have been engaged. I know my neighbors. I've held town halls. I am committed to be more engaged and informed and see what's going on and admit the things that I don't know. So that's kind of like NDP inspired me to run.
I love it.
I'm
I'd
running
love to hear it. The
Yeah.
NDP has inspired me to be a more political person. So thanks, NDP. Appreciate it. You brought us all to the table. You did mention just now that you are you're running because you have had in your particular writing an absent MLA. So in your writing, Mabel Elmore serves as the Parliamentary Secretary for Poverty Reduction under Shane Simpson, who has also announced that he is not going to be seeking re-election in this election. During their time working in close proximity together, they released Together BC, a strategy to reduce poverty by 25% by 2024. At a time where poverty, homelessness, illicit drug supply poisoning, and the growth of camps like Namagan and Camp KT are happening in our city, I'm curious how you feel about the notable absence of Mabel's voice around these issues at this time.
You want my feelings?
You are a therapist and a counselor, so yes, I would like your feelings.
I'm pissed. I'm pissed. I'm so mad and upset. If you could see my heart, it's beating so fast. We are in the middle of a pandemic, and if you are a frontline worker, if you're supporting people who are living in poverty, you know, when the election was announced, that's the same week that SERP was done, that ended. How can you possibly put the government in 6 weeks of hiatus? Is that the
Hiatus? Yeah.
that and put the financial reliefs and the small business relief on hold just to run an election when the eviction bans have been lifted? It's just bonkers to me. And
it's callous. If you ask me, my personal opinion is that that move was callous.
And it pains me. And also, what has been done in the past decade and a half to reduce poverty? We are I think the second most unaffordable city on the planet. And it's not because we're a poor province or poor, like Vancouver is a poor city. We have a lot of money. We can end poverty. We can end child poverty. We're one of the highest, we have the highest child poverty rates in Canada. That's awful. We have the money and the resources to stop it. We can end homelessness. We have the money, we have the subsidies. We can have free childcare for families who need it. We have the money, we have the resources, but we don't have people in power who listen to the community and put people first. I was on a debate last night with George Heyman, the environmental minister. We were
I didn't mean to laugh out loud. That was rude.
I was asking about the subsidies in Fort Side C, and he was like, well, that was a decision because the cost would have been so much to stop. And those are the kind of decisions we see when we put cost and money at the center of the decisions, not people. And putting profit and money at the center of our decisions, I believe, is what got us into a climate crisis. That's how we ended up in exploitation of our environment, of our climate, of our people, of labor, of third world countries, of developing countries, of mining, of the earth, of everything. So that's circling back, that's anti-poverty strategy. I'm not saying it worked. And what have they done? Like the 8th page of my Google search did not return any results. So I don't know. And I'm pissed. and I'm excited.
Thank you for being honest, and thank you for giving us your feelings. Today is World Mental Health Day, which I would not have known if I didn't have social media. So there's that. Um, you put a beautiful thread on your Twitter this morning, and just, you know, pointing to the fact that mental health has been woefully underfunded, continues to be woefully underfunded, and mainly because of stigma, people's inability to understand that, like, this is a health problem. This is the first crisis that we have been living through. So you did mention just now about subsidies. Now, to me, I'm not a extremely intelligent person. I'm just a person that pays attention to the news sometimes. But it seems to me that there's an opportunity to shift from subsidizing destructive industries and taking that money and putting it into other things like community supports, like massive investment into mental health. If you were elected MLA, what would you do with those subsidies? Like, what areas would you add funding to?
Oh, give me the money and the power. I make beautiful things. So let me tell you where I start. I'm a sexual assault counselor. In Vancouver, if you're a woman who's been raped, to get a fund, go to a nonprofit like VEVA and get proper, professional, appropriate, sensitive counseling, you have to wait 2 years. Just two, like from the moment you call until you actually sit down with a counselor is 2 years. That is not acceptable. That's why a lot of people don't ask for help. And we blame it on people. Like so many posts, like just ask for help. When people ask for help and it isn't available, we're putting the onus on the individual rather than understanding there's a system that is working against people asking for help. When you're asking for help and you're meeting, let's say you waited 2 years and you meet a counselor. When you're meeting a counselor who's getting paid $25 an hour, max, maybe 26, maybe some benefits, who's working with intense traumas day in, day out, who's overworked, who feels responsible, who cannot take sick days or feels guilty for taking sick days. We all have bleeding hearts, like in the mental health, like we just have bleeding hearts. It's so bad. Work-life balance doesn't exist for us. That counselor is going to take it home because there isn't a structure that supports that counselor. So we need investment in meaningful mental health, not a mental health that is by phone, which is a lot of insurance companies are turning into, of like, oh, you can text chat. Like, I'm not going to pour my heart out with the trauma that happened to me when I was 15 over a text to someone that I don't know and don't have a relationship. It works in crisis, absolutely. Texting, messages, phone calls work in crisis when it's 3 a.m., you're suicidal, and you just need a calming voice to walk you through that. Fantastic. To work through your trauma, no. Gateway drug, I had a mentor who said the gateway drug to addiction is trauma.
Yes.
Simple. And also, so like kind of like putting money back to the community, I was thinking of fostering. I would love to have a child. I'm not going to give birth because that's just not what my body wants to do. But I can't because it's so expensive. So I went to the MCFD's information session about fostering. A foster parent makes more money off of a child than the single parent who is the parent of the child. And that money that the foster parent makes is tax exempt.
Wow.
Just think about that system. Let that sink in. If I'm a struggling single parent, the government support that I take to keep my child fed in a safe housing is less if the child is taken away from me, put in a stranger's family family and the money that they make, that's 13, 14, 15, 1700, I don't remember what the number is, that's tax exempt. And just think about that in the context of Indigenous moms and birth alerts. When the hospital called DMCFD, and the moment an Indigenous woman in labor or Indigenous person in labor walks into a hospital. Just like put that together. It's shitty. Systemic racism is here.
Yeah, big time. If you were ever wondering if it exists or not, this is a prime example. This is not happening to non-racialized people. And it's absolutely disgusting. That's all. Yeah, it's wild. It's wild.
Did you get angry? Did you get like your heart?
Yeah, my eyeballs are sweating. They feel prickly, and I'm not happy about it. Nazanin, one of the things I love about the conversations that we've had so far is your dedication to creating a social support alternative. This makes me feel hella excited because I know, as a person that that has lots of experiences within my own family, within my own community, with mental health, with public drug use, with all of these things which have incorrectly become criminal issues when really they are public health issues. It does seem like we are in desperate need of a fourth level of service. Please tell us a little bit about what that might look like under your control.
Give me power. Give me power. And let's engage the community. This is coming from the community. This is not me sitting in my kitchen and just thinking of like, what is the solution for the province? This is coming from my years and years and decade of work with refugees, with people with precarious immigration status, with sex workers, with people struggling with addiction, with the amazing LGBTQ community. This is coming up from my work, that over and over I've seen how unsafe it is for people and how uncomfortable, even if it's not safe, even if it's not unsafe, it's just extremely uncomfortable to call the police. Just in the summer, because of COVID, because of the horrendous sanctions that are put on place against Iran, people in Iran are struggling, including my family. So anyways, so my mom's here. We couldn't get money from back home to support her here, so she got a roommate. And it turned into disaster. And I had to call the cops because that was the only way that I could get help to resolve a conflict at home. It wasn't violent. It was pretty aggressive. It was pretty like verbally aggressive. Like it was a pretty nasty situation. But there wasn't anyone who could come and mediate who weren't an armed officer. So at some point in my mom's tiny apartment, there was like 4 officers and 2 plainclothed officers. And I was like, this is what is happening. And this is the only way that we can get help. This is wrong. I put a motion. I was working with Jean Swanson for the safe access to city services. That calls for the BPD not to collaborate with the border agency to have people who are undocumented deported. I was working on that. The motion passed. I'm not sure if it means anything. 2 days later, I got a call from, it's seriously like, where's the follow-up? I got a call from one of the people I was organizing with, and they were like, we have an undocumented woman who was just sexually harassed by her employer. What can we do? And I was like, first of all, don't go to the police. Second of all, well, I told them to go to BWSS because they will protect her. But there was no way for her to intervene, and there was no way for someone to go and talk to that employer and say, hey, what you're doing is wrong, without involving the police. So it's not that the police is bad, but we need stronger social services in place for people who just either don't feel safe or feel comfortable approaching it, so that there's a trained, trauma-informed, queer competent, culturally safe, mental health emergency team with some authority who can come and resolve the situation without the criminal records, charging, courts, carceral punishment getting involved, and help people and then step back. If there's a violent situation, when there's a homicide, sure, absolutely, armed officer all the way, sure. Why do we have police in our schools? That was like, people ask me, like, I'm an immigrant, so people really want to like know what my culture shock was when I got here. Like, was it the food? Was it the clothes? Was it the streets? Yeah, like they were new, but they were not like outrageously new. Like, we have internet back home. Like, this is how we dress back home. Like, this is actually like my things from back home that I'm wearing. It was that, oh, like in high schools and elementary schools, they have like officers. Like, I still don't get, I honestly, I still don't get it. But, oh, like, why? Why do we, like, what? I just don't understand it. And if you look at the mental health calls that is called by, like, the mental health calls to BPD, like, it's like 70%, 60% are mental health calls.
Yeah.
Why not having a social services like that man? So as an MLA, I think, as the province, can mandate municipalities to create a response team the same way the province mandated all post-secondary education to have a response team and policy to sexual assault. That actually happened 4 years ago. The same way we can come up with a plan, a long-term plan, that we're gonna bring social services so that people can call, and if things bad, we're gonna get like more kind of militarized response, first responses in place. But for conflict between neighbors, for psychosis, for overdose, for homelessness, for sexual assault, for domestic violence, a lot of the times police involvement is not necessary, especially in domestic violence. And people love to say, what about rape victims? And actually, like, again, from my experience, a lot of survivors don't want to get the police involved. They're not after the bad guy to put them in jail. A lot of people just want to get over it. They want to move on. They want to go back to their normal life. They want the issue to be resolved, and they want the other person to be accountable and kind of like understand the fucked up thing that they did. A lot of people want that. They don't want the other person to go in jail. Some people do. Fantastic. They're right to want that. But when the police come, they only look at, like, can we charge this person? No? Okay, sorry, bye. We need trauma-informed people who don't victim blame. Yeah, I'm going to stop blabbering.
Agreed, not on the stop blabbering part. Agreed on the cops part. We need to begin to invest in real alternatives. If we are serious about seeing less death of Black people, of Indigenous people, of other people of color, other racialized folks, if we are serious about seeing less death from illicit drug poisoning, we really need to start stepping up and creating alternatives so that people don't die because they have health problems. One of the other things that is definitely related to this that has come out in your platform is decriminalizing drugs. Now, I am a big fan of marijuana personally. I love it. I think it's beautiful. I have a disease called multiple sclerosis, and I use cannabis to treat my illness because prescription drugs don't work for me. I can see that there are a lot of, the way that we chose to do decriminalization of cannabis in Canada was interesting, but there's a lot of talk in the news, in political parties, in activist circles about decriminalizing drugs because it will bring about an immediate shift in priorities. Why do you think that decriminalization is important at this specific juncture in time?
Oh my, where do I begin? You ask like deep questions.
I'm just trying to get to it.
Real talk, hashtag real talk. Where do I begin? Okay, let's start with Nancy Reagan, just say no, and war on drugs, which is war on Black people. Actually, do some research. That's my whole message on campaigning. do research, do your own reading. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to Tonye. Listen to us, but don't. I'm not trying to convince you. Do research.
Don't listen to me.
Do your research. Destigmatization, getting rid of the shame. I'm coming from a country that in Iran, we have a huge opioid use. We're living next door to a country that is one of the massive producers of opioids, us included. We also do that. Puppies, we have them. I have family members who've struggled with addiction and huge stigma. We have to lift up the stigma to be able to uplift people so that we can give them options for treatment and also deal with whatever trauma that they had to endure in their lives so that they have to cope by using drugs. When I was working in the downtown east side, I've never met a person who didn't have a history of trauma. Never. Or severe mental health issue, either of the two. And instead of giving them a stable living situation, they were just stigmatized. They were judged and shamed and lots of things. So yes, we have to decriminalize to stop the stigma, stop the shame, and stop policing. Like what is the rate of racialized people who are in jail right now and are being charged for possession? This is one of the other systemic racisms that's happening, is that it targets Black people, Indigenous people, other people of color. We're not vulnerable, we're targeted. There's a difference. I'm not vulnerable because I'm Iranian. I'm not vulnerable because I'm a woman. I'm targeted because I'm an immigrant woman. So there's a targeting that needs to stop. Decriminalization is part of that. And the province listened to Dr. Bonnie Henry, and we did a good job.
Right? But it's very convenient. They will listen so hard to Bonnie, but Bonnie has been front and center calling for this, and for some reason, it's too far of a leap.
We need to. So, what I really want to stand on is that it's not on personal values. It's not on my personal opinions. We need policies. We need MLAs. We need people in power who listen to data, research, experts. And experts include people who have lived experience and field experience and training experience. And the mess that we are in with drugs, with substance use, is because it's been based on values and not research. Because research after research after research, data after data after data, community organizers and members after community organizers and members have been calling for decriminalization and safe supply. And safe supply. We have to decriminalize and have safe supply. And Tonye, on a personal note, I have severe endometriosis. I had surgery 4 years ago for severe. It's a condition that if you want, the membranes of my uterus travel outside of my body and give me a headache and a pain. Nothing worked. Nothing, like strongest painkillers never worked on me. Weed was the only thing that worked. And I had to make
Weed
a
for everybody.
Of, am I going to use like very strong painkillers that is going to ruin my stomach, or am I going to have a smoke of joint? And I actually don't like being high. I actually like, and I'm a counselor, so like I need to be in control of my emotions all the time. So I don't like being high actually, but that was the only thing it worked. And if it wasn't decriminalized, I would be doing something illegal to manage my pain and be able to actually sit up like straight. I wouldn't have like, for that 2 years that I was waiting for my surgery, I was on the floor all the time. Like that's how my friends remember me. They were like, you just like curled up on the ground. It was like I left my job because I couldn't work because I was in so much pain and nausea, which actually helped. So yes.
We just need options, and decriminalization allows that to happen.
Yeah.
I have a question. I just I dropped into the chat. If anybody has a specific question they would like to ask Nazanin, these are all questions that I want to know because this is real talk that I want to hear. But if you have specific questions that you would like to hear, please feel free to drop them in the chat or send them to me in a message, and I will ask them of Nazanin. I'm going to ask you a question that was dropped in the chat by M. Sheardown. I don't know your first name, M. Bet it's not Michael. What are your perspectives on some of the key environmental issues in BC? So that includes fracking, greenhouse gas emissions, LNG, et cetera, et cetera.
Gives me panic attacks. Gives me panic attacks. Before getting involved with politics, like until last year, I was absolutely stuck, and I became immobilized by the fear that we're gonna die in the next 10-15 years because of environment. Now I'm kind of like, maybe there's something we can do. Maybe it needs to stop right away. We are like, I think there are 4 kind of crises that are happening in BC. Global pandemic was one, opioid crisis, climate crisis, sexual assault crisis. 80% of women, 50% of trans and non-binary people, according to data, which is always underreported, has experienced sexual assault. That's a pandemic. Yeah, that face. Yes, that's a pandemic. That's a crisis. So we have 4 crises, and we need solutions for all of them now. We needed them yesterday. We needed them 3 years ago, when the NDP was blaming the Liberals for the mess that we were in 4 years ago, in 2016, 2017, and they just turned around and just like did the same thing. It needs to stop right now. We should not put profit first. We should not think about, oh, the BC is going to go in debt if we don't stop fracking and LNG and Site C. So be it. So be it. When we don't have life as we know it anymore on this planet, it doesn't matter how much money we freaking saved. I'm not going to swear. Fucking saved. I'm going to swear. It doesn't matter. We are in an emergency, and we need to treat it as an emergency and pay the price. If it costs money to stop and save the environment, we're going to pay the price and stop the emergency. The climate disaster is going to be waiting for us. A lot of BC is coastal. We're going to be underwater if we don't stop this, if we don't stop the carbon emission, if we don't stop our old growth forest. Take a ride from Port Renfrew to Cavachon Lake in Vancouver Island. It's overwhelmingly traumatic to watch kilometers of forest just being all cleared. You don't see that in your ride from North Van to Whistler. It's all pretty because it's touristy. That road, that was the first time I just felt what we're doing. What are we doing? It needs to stop. And there's only one party that is going to hold both Liberals and NDP accountable to that. We need to have a strong Green presence to hold them accountable and say no. Every time we said no, every time the NDP brought it to the floor, we said no, we voted against it, and we continue to vote against it.
I'm here for this 100%. There's often this feeling from, at least from my community, that the Greens are not a viable option. And to them, I say the Greens are the conscience. The Greens are the conscience of our system. And without them, we have a really hard time calling out this exact thing and being like, hey, it really doesn't matter if we're all dead, or it really doesn't matter if our forests are gone, or if we've destroyed, our planet entirely. So I am, to anyone who is not certain if this is a good choice or not, I encourage you to just forget about politics and think about the planet and about human life and the life of all the rest of the species that are on this earth. It literally won't matter if we destroy ourselves. We have to get this right now. I have another question in here from Miles Black. Would you speak to the relationships you have with the indigenous nations on whose land you are working on. Are there Indigenous leaders that you work with or defer to?
Not leaders. I'm not. I'm a frontline worker. This is pretty new to me. I know people on the ground. I know individual people. I know of people who are in leadership, but no, I haven't worked with leaders because this is pretty new to me. But I've learned to listen and build relationship with people who are working on the ground right now. And I'm hoping this is what I'm going to bring with me. Where I stand, again, as a sexual assault counselor, where I stand, it's so clear to me. It's so clear to me where we look at the spectrum of violence. We see the spectrum on one end, or like in the circles, whatever that the metaphor that can be used. On one end, we have the violence to earth, the violence to the land, the violence to Indigenous bodies, the violence towards Indigenous women and girls and non-binary people, and the sexual assault pandemic that has been happening for centuries towards Indigenous people. It's a spectrum. That's the kind of a relationship I see myself in. This is the framework that I work from. We need to act on this. And for this violence to stop, we need to intervene at every level. At the leadership level, yes. At the grassroots level, yes. At the environment level, yes. At a sexual assault, yes. And what we see with Joyce Chokwan, if I'm pronouncing her last name right, in Quebec, with the violence that the nurses were inflicting on this person in the last moments of her life. If you've lost anyone in your life, if you've been through accompanying someone in their last moments of your life, you know how precious it is. And that would never leave you. And I can't fathom what her family and her community is going through because of that violence. So no, I don't have leader relationships right now with the leaders. I hope that I can work with them. And we have to do this. There's no other way.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And I thank you, Miles, for your question. Absolutely key as we are doing this work on stolen land is making sure that we are always in relationship with the people whose land that we're on and making sure that we're fighting for their best interests. Yet again, another reason why I particularly joined the Green Party is that when it comes down to it, there is no climate justice without Indigenous justice, and there is no Indigenous justice without Black liberation, and there is no Black liberation or Indigenous justice without round understanding of the truth of why we are in the position that we are in. It stems back to colonialism, capitalism, imperialism, and an addiction to profit always. And the only way to counter that is through relationship. So Miles, thank you so much for that question. Also, Nazanin, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about some leaders that we should probably have a little chit chat with. I have another question here from Matt Dowse. And we did cover this at the beginning a little bit, but always in information that people need to know. What is your background as a labor organizer? And how do you think the BC Greens can change their relationship, or at least the perceived relationship, with workers and the labor movement as a whole?
Yes, good question. My favorite kind of topic. So my introduction to like political realm actually come from my union. My first job that I had in the real world after graduation, as a timid international student on postgrad work permit, was a unionized job with BCJU in the downtown east side. I was lucky, and I didn't realize how lucky I was that I had a very union supportive manager who actually like had our back when she sat at the bargaining table and bargained. And she was like, I'm gonna get you better benefits. But she was sitting like against the union. Like she had to like pretend that she was against the union, but she was like, I'm gonna get you more sick leave. And I was like, and I just didn't realize, I thought that was the norm. I didn't know any better. Like back home, like we have so many union leaders in prison because the moment they speak up against not getting paid for like 3 months, they're put in jail. So like my perceptions of unions were really informed by those just violent experiences. My parents were really concerned about me working in a unionized environment, and they're like, be safe. So it took me some time to understand what that's like. And then I had a job with QP. So the first job was kind of like, I just take it as granted that like, this is what it is. And then in my QP, it was the opposite. Like we had a manager who just hated unions. And I couldn't understand why. And then I started to get it. And so I was QP 1936. The late president of 1936 was a strong advocate, like 12 years ago, for $10 daycare. And then Cheryl Burns took over, and she just like took me under her wing, mentored me, and I got involved with the unit chair and conventions. And then I started to organize with another job that I had, and they joined QP 1936, and then we were fired, and then we were hired back. It was a whole debacle in UBC with that. So that's kind of my background, and that's kind of like the mentorship that I got started to kind of like activate my mind in terms of like, oh, policies, political change, actually like in terms of political structure, unions, social issues, disability rights, minority rights. It kind of like all came into together. So that's kind of like where I stand. And then I started to kind of think, and I started to observe, and then climate change and how labor rights move into like kind of like fit into climate change. And then John Horgan started to talk about creating jobs, and actually Christy Clark also talked about creating jobs with LNG. And I was like, well, but those jobs are going to be done when we do eventually make the switch to green economy and green jobs. So like, if you're advocating for the workers, like give them an alternative option. Actually, like one of the things that Tonye and I connected with when I sent that tweet about going to Dawson Creek, and
that's my hometown.
Yeah. And that's how we actually started to talk, because I went to deliver a training for in sexual assault to Dawson Creek, and we were just chatting. And it's a logging city. A lot of like the city is supported by logging industry, and like since the logging industry is going down, they're seeing a huge increase in sexual assault and in domestic violence cases. And we were just chatting about that, and I was like, well, it's going to happen eventually to all the province. That right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We need, and people need livelihood. People have mortgages and children and schools and money matters and health issues. They need stable jobs. So yes, we need to put the workers' needs at the forefront of our movement and our policies, but not by investing more in fossil fuels. And I think that's what actually happened in the federal election in Alberta. Because people are scared. They have the right to be scared for their livelihood. Absolutely, as a counselor, I relate.
Yeah.
And we need to give them an alternative of like, okay, if we take these jobs away because you should not work on a coal mine anymore, here is windmills, wind farms, those things like.
Well, that's something that actually is part of one of the campaign promises that was just made by Sonia First to Now. I think it was maybe today as part of the, right? Nice job. As part of the clean recovery from COVID-19. One of the biggest things that everyone seems to forget is the fact that if we want people to buy into this new green future, we have to be honest about the fact that there are oil and gas workers that need work, and shifting our focus from demonizing them to providing an option or an opportunity for them to want to be healthy, to want to do healthier work is absolutely key. And I was so pleased to see that in the platform promises, because if we are really real about talking about this new future, this new paradigm, that's really where we have to start, because those people who are relying on that money from that industry will fight us tooth and nail every single inch of the way.
Absolutely. 100%.
Right? It's a just transition. That's what we're calling for. Just transition through COVID-19, through all of the crises that we're looking at, using evidence-based policy, talking to the people that these policies actually affect, and just not continuing on with the status quo. I want to take a second to drop a link in the chat. Nazanin, this is a link to your BC Greens page. Yeah, I know you're not going to do it yourself, so I'm going to do it for you. If you haven't donated to Nazanin's campaign, please do so. I donated this morning, feel really good about it, feel like a better person, feel like I've made a decision that's going to save my soul in the future. I might go to heaven. Who knows? We'll see. I would definitely like to... Thank you, Matt, for asking the excellent question. I would like to encourage you to take a second to just make sure that website is open on your device, so that when we leave this conversation, you will have an opportunity to make a donation. I'm also going to drop, sorry, Nazanin, I'm doing it. I'm going to drop your Twitter in there too. If you use Twitter, please jump on there, follow them. You can follow me too if you like.
Yes.
I drop some hot takes from time to time. Yes. And other than that, I would retweet what I find good. And then the last and final thing I'm going to drop in here is just the link to your campaign website, which has your campaign promises on it. Yes. Once again, just to reiterate, healthier economy, healthier environment, healthier neighborhoods, the top 3 things. This is the real reason I'm here. The top 3 things that you have promised: a social support alternative, anti-poverty strategy, which, not trying to call out Mabel Elmore, but Mabel,
where are you?
That's your portfolio. So someone's coming for your job. And then number 3, decriminalizing drugs. As we said, Bonnie Henry published an incredible report last year. I'm going to go ahead and drop that in the chat for those of you who haven't had an opportunity to read it. It is essential reading. If we are serious about doing the right thing for our community, these 3 things are easy things that we can attack right away and start making change happen in our community. Nazanin, we have but 8 minutes left.
Oh my God. Can we just spend that on cherishing you? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, but listen, let's cherish my sweater first.
Oh. Yes.
It says dismantle colonial oppression. I just want to take a second to shout out Decolonial Clothing Company, which is run by an incredible musician from here named Dakota Bear. Yes. If you don't know Dakota, you don't read the newspaper, because Dakota is famous and incredible. Definitely check out their work, support them. They're incredible people. They're doing good things in the community. They're trying to educate people about... I ordered my sweater already. You know what's up. Nazanin, is there anything else you want to tell these fine folks before we get out of here?
Oh my, first of all, Tonye, speechless. Amazing.
I love you.
Oh my, thank you. We're going to take over the world together. Oh my God. In a good way, in a very good way.
Seeking control.
In a good way.
Oh, yo, Matt says, I hope we see your name on a ballot next time, Tonye.
So I have a question for you, Tonye.
Hit me with it.
If a snap election was called would you have run?
No.
Why not?
I am first of all, I'm a Black person. Okay.
In case anyone hasn't noticed.
In case there's some people who might be visually impaired. They're not looking, or maybe they're just listening. I am a Black person, which means automatically it's harder for me to run. 2, in order to drop everything, you need to have full community supports. You need to have money. You need to have connections to community that has money to support you, and you need to have time. What you can't have is a disability, children, a family that you need to take care of, mental illness, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just not possible. And I don't mean to be cruel when I say this, but I mean it. Calling this snap election at this time was an extremely racist move. I know that some people don't understand that, but if you really zoom out and look at the situation, the NDP knew that this was coming. They were able to gather the candidates of color that they knew that they could support and that would be supported, and that left everyone else in a really crappy position. I am so proud of you, Nazanin, for standing up, but I understand how difficult it is to do that in such a short period of time. And that's why I came to volunteer, because it's not fair, especially for people that are trying to do the right thing.
Just adding to that, one night, since the campaign started, I finished working at 10:30, and I was like, oh my, like, what am I doing for the rest of my time? Like, what am I doing with the rest of the night? Because I can't take time off. I'm supporting people who are fighting eviction and end of serve, and I can't just take time off. Also, as an independent contractor, time off equals no pay.
Yeah.
I'm a single income person here. I can't afford not to get paid. I'm working full time and running a full campaign with the help of gracious people like you, like Shiva, who's a host of this amazing Zoom, like Frank, like my friend Ozin, like my mom, like anyone who volunteered their time, energy, effort, money, services. My neighbor is my financial agent. Her daughter.
This is how I do it, though.
This is how her daughter designed these buttons and went with her dad and made those buttons. This is how I'm doing the campaign, and this is what I'm about: civic engagement, getting engaged people who might not engage otherwise. And this has been really difficult, but I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it to my best, and do my best in my 2.5 jobs and in my campaign. And as Tonye said, it took great privilege for me to be able to run. And I was like, okay, can I go in debt because I'm going to run this campaign? And I was like, yes. And I have a year and 2 years to pay that. So I'm going to make this decision because I'm at a place that I have the privilege of going to debt, which I didn't have actually when I first moved to Canada because I had no credit. I have friends and connections who can come together and put support into place so that I can run. My only responsibility to a live being in my home is my dog and my plants. Like plants I can take care of, but I like my dog is now hiking with my friend because I was like, I can't properly care for him. If I had kids, if I had a disability, if I wasn't last night I was just talking to Tonye that I just curled up and I wanted to hide because I was just so exhausted. If my mental health was not in the place that I am, I couldn't have run. The day that I went to submit my nomination form and they were like, oh, did you come? Like, are you here for voting? And I was like, no, I'm here to submit. And they were like, oh, there are people who are already casted their votes. Because the NDP, they had the time to get prepared. So within the first 3 days, they had all their paperwork done. And people were voting before even I got a chance to submit my packet. That's not democracy.
No way.
So vote, research, my final word, research, educate yourself and decide for yourself. And we're going to see what we can do. Tonye, amazing.
No, you are amazing. Thank you, each and every one of you, for coming through, for participating, for giving your questions. I believe in you. I believe that you will all make the right decision for yourselves and for your families and for the future. For me, that is green. For me, that is supporting the candidates that are running, that have been put into this really crappy situation of having to participate in this run. But we all have an ability to help out in whichever ways we can. So please hit the links on the side. Nazanin's Twitter is there. Their website is there, and also the link through which you can make a donation to their campaign. Please do so. Democracy must live.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your Saturday morning. This is still morning.
It's still morning. It's before 3 p.m. We're good.
3 p.m. Yes.
All
Thank
right.
you, everyone.